So the first thing I needed to do for this course was obtain Lidar data. For those of you that don't know, Lidar data is laser elevation. And what they do is they either fly planes or drones over areas and they get very detailed topographical maps. In other words, the elevation of the terrain. Without this data, it is extremely, if not impossible, to build a course with any reasonable accuracy. So the first thing you need to do with any course is determine if there's LiDAR data available. In the US, this is somewhat organized. There's a USGS website, and some states have their own websites, so you can typically find it. Around the world, it gets a little bit more challenging, and there's some areas it's just not available. But in this program I have open up right now, it's called QGIS. Essentially what I've done already is I've zoomed in here, I selected my area of interest, which creates a thing called a shapefile. And that shapefile identifies the geography that I'm interested in. And then I take that shapefile and I go to the site that has that LiDAR data and I download it. And those files are actually pretty big. Sometimes they can be upwards of a gig of aggregate data, a lot of different files. Essentially, I download that information. Depending on the format, I have to do a couple different things. Some formats, I have to use a thing called Cloud Compare to merge it together and then dice it out. Sometimes, depending on it, I don't need to use Cloud Compare. Process can get somewhat complicated. But at the end of that, two things come out. I have a height map file, which is essentially my course mapped, an elevation map of the course, but it is kind of like blank. It's like just a piece of clay at this point. All right. And I have also what I call satellite overlays, which are a picture from a satellite looking down on my course. So I can start to map all those attributes. So I've done that already. It took me about 2 hours, but for some areas it can take longer. If you run into problems, you have to do the whole thing over again. For beginners, it can be very challenging. But I've completed it and I just spared you all those details.